to shoot on the buzzer, drains it.
Better basketball and
He snips a little, intercepted now, here's Hart, bounce pass, Dusha, Wiley!
It's hard to play well, but it's easy to work hard. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Athlete Podcast sponsored by Sports for Champions. Today I'm delighted to be joined by professional basketballer Joe Hart. How are you today, Joe?
I'm very well, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We like to start these podcasts at the very beginning. How did you first get into basketball?
From a young age, both my parents worked at the same school. My dad was my PE teacher, and having parents that are both teachers, you have to get to school very early, unfortunately, as a kid, much to my disappointment. But there was a basketball court there and my older sister played, so we'd get dropped off at school at 7:30 in the morning. Parents would go after work and we'd have an hour or so to kill and just start dribbling around and shooting in the sports hall. So that's kind of where I first fell in love with the game.
That's awesome. Do you think you had a bit of a natural talent for it?
No, definitely. It came very easily. I was awful at football. I was awful at a lot of other sports, and to find a sport where this is pretty easy. And I think as kids, when you find something that's easy and you're good at it, you kind of think, I want to do this more.
Definitely. I imagine, how old are you now?
I'm 30.
30, so I imagine back then basketball probably wasn't huge in your school or among your friendship groups, is that right?
I think my dad had put on basketball clubs and stuff like that, and with my sister playing, for me it was quite a big sport. But yeah, definitely it wasn't people weren't wearing basketball jerseys, people weren't talking about it all the time, which is starting to change now, I think.
And then did you go on to join a club in the UK, anything like that?
So yeah, my sister is 3 years older than me, and she'd been good as well and was playing for a club called the Southend Swifts. And me being the little annoying brother that I was, would follow her around everywhere. And the coach was really cool, would let me run around and dribble and shoot while they were practicing. So I kind of tagged along from there. And then as I got a little bit older and able to play for the boys side of things, I just slipped right in and joined the men's team, boys team.
That's awesome. What kind of player were you back then?
I think at that age, you're just trying to kind of have fun, and it's very much just straight lines, shooting layups. Whereas I talk to a lot of my teammates now, when I look at kids who are young, the skill that these kids have now is just so incredible. I couldn't even fathom doing the stuff that people are doing now. So it's cool to see where the game has come and the level and ability that these kids have growing up.
Definitely. And what was it like first joining a club, going from sort of shooting on the sidelines to actually playing the competitive games?
Before the club had come around, my dad was really good at school. We were playing other schools, so we'd have teams from primary school. We'd go and play the local primary schools, and we were quite a good team. So I was getting a lot of experience of playing basketball before joining the club, and it was kind of just itching and waiting to kind of play on the weekends as well. So it was more of finally this has happened. Now I can get to play more basketball than it was I'm nervous or a bit intimidated by it.
Are you a competitive person?
Yeah, there's definitely some competitive juices that are flowing. I think when I was younger, I used to let it kind of be all-consuming, and you win a game or you lose a game and it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you and you're miserable for 4 days. I'm sure if you ask my mum or my dad about that when I was younger, I was definitely a nightmare to be around. But I think as I've gotten older and played more, there is that competitiveness, but I can switch it off when I step away from basketball. When it comes to basketball, uber competitive. Everything else I'm pretty chilled out about.
That's good. It's probably a good balance to have, to be fair.
I think so.
So spoiler alert, you did end up going over to the US. Can you tell us a bit about the build up to that and about how that came about?
Yeah, so my older sister, again, kind of following her footsteps. When she was 18 and I was 15, she got a scholarship to go over to college over there. And took off, and it had always kind of been a dream of mine. While she was going through that process, I was I really want to do that one day, and maybe when I'm 18 I could do it. And then I started thinking, why wait to 18? I know a couple of people that have gone over to America for high school once they're from 16, once they'd finished high school over here. And I'd kind of spoken to my parents about it, and if they would be okay, because obviously it's a difficult thing sending, let alone your 18-year-old daughter halfway around the world to then your 16-year-old son. But I'm really lucky that they're so incredibly supportive and always kind of like pushed me and my sister to chase our dreams. And from there, when I kind of got the go ahead from them, it was like going online and looking at every possible high school and finding emails and sending out emails, just being like, hi, this is my name, this is what I've done, I've got some film, I want to come and play. But I was fortunate enough to have a couple of connections, and a man named Darren Johnson had a connection to a coach out in New Jersey at a school called Blair Academy, where a couple of other English guys have gone. One who plays in the BBL, Justin Robertson, who's a 2-time BBL MVP, had an incredibly great career, played for Great Britain. He went to that high school, got in touch, and was lucky enough to form a relationship with the coach and then head out there for 3 years. So that was pretty life-changing and an awesome time.
That's amazing for you to take the impetus on yourself to actually go out there and sort of make it happen. I thought kind of that, because basically all the basketballers that we talked to and that have joined Sports for Champions have spent some time in the US, but I kind of thought it was a case that you get kind of picked up. But
well, I think it depends on the age group, right? Like, I think at 16 you're not necessarily getting recruited to go places. You kind of have to go out there. Whereas if you go at 18, I think the colleges have a lot of guys who are actively looking to bring in talented players, and they've got all this scholarship, and they're there for their 4 years and bring them to their program. Whereas at 16, it's not necessarily as, you're not getting recruited internationally to go to a different school at 16.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of the actual education side of things, is that something that was important to you?
I've never been bad at school. I'd say I did enough to get by. I really struggled with maths. So I had to put in a bit of extra work when it came down to it for maths. But like, the school that I went to was an incredible school, and small class sizes, good teachers that cared. If you're not doing your homework, like, they're coming, we lived on campus, they're coming to find you,
right,
dragging you to class. So it's definitely, it was a cool experience to see like the emphasis that they put on it. And in America in itself, it's like this whole, you have to get this certain grade point average, otherwise you can't do your sport, whereas we don't really have that in England. It's just pass fail, really.
Even to progress to the next year, I think you have to get a certain amount.
Exactly. I remember my year in university, I ended up like passing what I needed to like maintain my scholarship by like 0.9%. So it was like very tooth and nail. Yeah. So
that's amazing. Wow. And then how did you find the culture shock? Obviously, I think anybody leaving home at 16 would have come up against some challenges, but it must have been a whole new country, a whole new culture.
Well, when I went, it was, I remember there was, iPhones weren't really a thing. There's no FaceTime. Like, we had Skype, but I remember having to call like a 1p a minute number to get connected through to my parents that I'd speak to maybe once a week.
Wow.
So obviously times are different. I missed them greatly, and I'm sure they missed me too, but for me, I was kind of, this was the dream. This is what I'd wanted for more than over all my life, really. Like, and I'm living it. But yeah, culturally, I don't think it was too bad at that point, because for me, culture was basketball, and at that point I was immersed in it. Obviously the way they speak, sometimes they couldn't understand me, so I'd have to speak a little bit slower, and inevitably you end up with a twang and getting very Americanized.
Trash can.
Yeah, and water, not water. So, but yeah, I was fine, because especially living on campus, we had a bunch of international students as well. It was a very diverse population in the school, so it was quite an easy transition, to be honest with you.
So you were there for 3 years?
3 years.
And then where did you go from there?
From there, I went to Canada, to a university called Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, which is in the middle of nowhere in Canada, and it's freezing cold, and was definitely, that was a bit of a culture shock for sure.
Really? So in terms of the cold, is that just, is it, like in Canada, I think they have really extremes on either side, like really hot summers and then obviously like sub-zero winters for like months on end. Was that the case?
Well, so when I got there, it was quite nice. It wasn't too hot, and we went away for a pre-season trip. And I remember speaking to people on campus. When we left, it was fine. The next day, there was like 4 foot of snow.
Wow.
We used to have like, the university had its own snow plows like on campus ready, so you weren't ever missing school. And then I remember in May, when I left to come home for the summer, it was snowing.
Wow.
I was like, this is May, what's going on here?
That's unbelievable.
And the way it worked for us, like, I lived on campus and had to walk to the gym for practice. It was like a 10-minute walk, so nothing too crazy. but there was like a 2-week phase where it was -40.
-40?
-40 with wind chill.
Oh
and I'm talking,
God.
you walk outside, your nostrils freeze, your beard freezes, your eyelashes freeze.
Wow.
Yeah, it was intense.
That's unbelievable, wow. And then in terms of the study side of things, was that a university kind of deal?
Yeah, so it was university. That's in America they call it college. In Canada it's very similar to us where they call it university. I studied a subject called kinesiology, which I absolutely despised. And the look in your face is the look that everyone gives me.
I've never heard of that.
It's like a mix between physiotherapy and sports science, kind of, but you're neither a sports scientist nor a physical therapist, and I just couldn't get on board with it.
Kinesiology?
Yeah, kinesiology.
Is that like the study of movement or something?
Yeah, effectively. But yeah, just it wasn't for me. It was one of those courses that I ended up taking because I was like, oh, it's linked to sport, maybe I'll enjoy it, because I think that's one of the issues with many sportsmen when they go to university, right? I'm going to this university because I want to follow my dream to play my sport. Oh, I need to do education alongside of it. Let me just pick whatever. I think in America a lot of people do end up doing sports management, stuff like that. But yeah, that was not for me, so they nipped that in the bud quite quickly.
In terms of the basketball, are you playing when you come? Presumably you're coming back home at the summers.
Yeah, so throughout that time from 16 to 19, I was playing for the under-16s England team, playing for the under-18 England team, the under-20s Great Britain team, and then my last year I finished my senior year at Blair, and then that summer I did my final year with the under-20 Great Britain team, where we had quite a successful summer. I think we went 19-1. We lost one game all year, which was in the final of the European Championships.
That's a killer.
To a Polish team that we beat in the group stages, but they were a very good team with some very good players. So it was like a pretty cool culmination to like my string of playing for the national team, and in my opinion was going to be my hurrah, my final goodbye to youth national team basketball.
How's the difference in level compared to where you were playing, obviously at university in Canada, compared to sort of the higher levels of the Team England youth setup?
Well, so my final year was coming straight out of high school, and it was like just the style of basketball in terms of, in America, even the rules. My final year in America, we're playing 8-minute quarters with no shot clocks, whereas out here in Europe, we play 10-minute quarters with 24-second shot clocks. So there's a lot more action, a lot more ball movement. And some of the players that we were playing against in that under-20s have gone on to play EuroLeague, which is the effectively the next best league after the NBA. So some very high level players in that league. So it was some good competition.
How's your sort of position and I suppose like playing style changed over those years?
I think it's been pretty consistent throughout. I've always been someone that shot the ball really well, and that's kind of been my main asset, and I like to think I've got quite a high IQ when it comes to that, and that's been pretty consistent throughout my career. The other areas on the outside have evolved a little bit with some of the extra work that I put in, but like if I was to break it down as to like what's the one thing that leads me to be successful, it would be that a theme of shooting the ball well from youth all the way through to my professional career.
So if I was a young person and I was looking to sort of follow in those footsteps and maybe improve that side of my game, what kind of things would you recommend?
That's a good question. Just reps. There's a lot of different ideology and methodology that's coming into training now, and what's the right way to train and what's the wrong way to train. But for me, it was just shooting the ball lots, and going before school and shooting the ball, staying after school, shooting the ball on the weekends. Mum, Dad, can you come rebound for me? Having a hoop in the back garden, I'm going to shoot. And I think there's something said just to be with yourself and a basketball, shooting, running after it. Like you kind of just learn a lot about yourself and ingrain technique and what works, what doesn't work. And I think the only way really to do that is just putting in the hours.
Yeah, finding that muscle memory.
Yeah.
And then in terms of technique and shooting, I know that there is people who have slightly different techniques. Do you think it's something where you kind of should just find what feels natural for you and what works for you, or do you think you should kind of pick a technique and work on that?
I think it's a good mixture of both, isn't it? Really, like I think there's a lot of talk about like continual motion and not breaking motion. So and creating energy from the floor and not stopping that energy. On top of like just physics, right? Like the higher you shoot the ball, the more chance it has to go in. A hoop can fit 2 basketballs in if you drop them at the same time. So if I shoot a ball flat, it only sees so much of the hoop, as opposed to if I give it more arc, it sees a lot more of the hoop, so it's a bigger chance of it going in.
Wow,
so like, just in terms of like if there's 2 things that continual motion and arc is like 2 things that I don't actually do in my jump shot, but like if you break it down and look at like very successful shooters, that's what tends to be like a theme throughout.
So you touched on it there, but say for example, for the perfect jump shot, can you describe the actual mechanics of what's taking place just quickly?
That's an interesting question, the perfect jump shot. I guess if you were to look at someone like Steph Curry and how he shoots the ball and the speed and how good it looks when it comes off, right? You look at that and think, wow, that's really good. I just think that continual motion, that the ball is moving from point A to point B without stopping, and stereotypical basketball is snapping your wrist. You know, you hear coaches say, put your hand in the cookie jar. Any sort of backward rotation on the ball is always beneficial for it. So
right, okay, so that's like pushing underneath it and leveraging it up.
Yeah, it's a term that gets thrown about now is about loading your wrist and making sure that the wrist is cocked at the right angle, as opposed to having it here and shooting the ball flat. Loading your wrist allows you to get the proper arc. So
that's interesting.
Us getting into the intricacies of
it's interesting to be fair. I've played a little bit of basketball. Being tall, I was generally gone.
Such
and
is the
stuff
way.
like that. Stick it up front, and but yeah, it's interesting to hear. So you finished was it the under 20 Euros with you were unfortunate in the final, and then is it a case of assessing your options?
So the plan was always to go back to university from there. But I played quite well. I think in the tournament I'd end up shooting like 50% from 3 for the whole tournament on a lot of shots, which is quite good.
Is that half of your shots that you took from outside the 3-point line went in?
Yeah.
Nice.
So that was quite, and I think like if you look at someone, like if you're looking at good percentages, you want to be shooting in the 40s% is good from 3. So I'd had a really good tournament shooting the ball wise, and it was coming to a stage where a couple of my teammates were already playing pro, so it was always in like the back of my mind. And I wasn't super keen on going back to the cold in Canada and studying kinesiology again that I was loving at the time. And kind of a couple of teams had reached out with some opportunities, so I ended up going back to Canada with the intention of completing my second year, and then just discussing with my parents and like what my goals had been and like the opportunity that was in front of me. Kind of grabbed it with both hands and haven't looked back since, and headed off to Spain for my first season as a pro. So
you had a bit of a culture shock, America, Canada. Now you've got a whole new language to contend with. How old are you at that point?
19, 20 was my first season. So
you're still young. How did you find that? Did you like Spain?
I think that was difficult at first. No one on my team really spoke English. The coach spoke Spanish. Again, I think it helped that the weather was nice, so in terms of going from one extreme to the other. Living 5-minute walk away from the beach is always nice,
Of course. Whereabouts in Spain were you?
Alicante. So
Nice. I was in Alicante last summer actually.
Yeah, so it's nice. It's a nice place to live. I think again, initially it was quite difficult sitting on the bus and you're not understanding anything that's going around you. It's distracting because you're kind of dodging allwhere and everywhere to like, by the end, it's just white noise in the background, and it's like quite enjoyable not having to think about anything.
Of course.
But it was also a cool opportunity because with everyone around me speaking a different language, you pick it up quite quickly. And I've never spoke Spanish in my life, but after my first year, I would say I could get by. You could drop me in the middle of Spain and I'd be fine. Like my grammar would be wrong. I'll be speaking English, Spanish, but other than that, and I've been fortunate to kind of carry that through and think that like now when I go on holiday, if I go to Spain, it's no problem. I can order us dinner, or we can go out here if we have questions. I can ask people. So that's a life skill that I can take with me throughout, which is pretty awesome.
Of course, it opens up not just Spain, obviously, but a lot of the Americas and the other countries. That's really cool. And then in terms of the basketball in Spain, so this is your first pro contract. How was the level there?
Oh, well, I started off in a lower league, so the level wasn't great, but I think it was perfect because you get to play as much as you can, and you're on court just playing and learning. And if you speak to many basketball players who've played in Spain, like the way they play in Spain, for me, is so beautiful with the ball movement and the skill that you're taught and the intricacies of the game and how to read things. And techniques that you've never seen before. So it was a really cool learning experience, and I was surrounded by some good people who wanted to see me succeed. So were more than happy to work with me every day. And as a young pro, that's kind of what you want. You know, you're drilled, and you have this ongoing theme that, you know, you need to work hard, and you've got people around you that are willing to help you work hard. So it was a good setup.
You hear it a lot from our athletes who do go out to the US that there's so much importance placed on physicality. They basically the workload in terms of physically when they go out there is so much bigger than what they're doing in the UK. But the UK tends to be and Europe tends to be a lot more technique based. Is that similar?
No, I do 1,000%. I think it's like, with the funds and everything that they have available to themselves over there in the collegiate system and all of that, like, if you have that available to you, why would you not get the best of the best and the best medical facilities? You see the weight rooms that are phenomenal, right? And we want you to be in the best shape you can possibly be in, and peak performance, peak physicality, whereas a lot of these other places in Europe don't have that funding. Right, like, I think a big culture shock is for Americans who go over to Europe, who have been in a college for 4 years, where you get trainers, you get your laundry done for you, you get 4 meals a day and all of this, and then you go somewhere in Europe and it's like you're in a little room, there's one physio who comes once a week, practice for 2 hours a day, and then you're kind of by yourself. But yeah, I think it's just differences that are placed on what's important in the game, and at the end of the day it's the performance on the court, isn't it, and how you can be successful. And I think that Europe is catching up, especially like high level Europe and those things, and maybe America has a different philosophy on it. Not to say what's right or wrong, but it's definitely different.
And so how long were you in Spain?
Spain was 3 years. Which I really enjoyed. And then from there back to England, I ended up playing in Newcastle after that for a season, so that was pretty cool as well.
Back to the cold.
Yeah, that was an eye opener. I'd never been up north, and again, talk about going from a foreign language to another foreign language. It took me a good 2 months to be able to understand what the locals were saying.
The Geordies.
Yeah, but it's a lovely place and some really good people up there as well.
Yeah, some of the funnest people in the UK.
Definitely, and Newcastle is quite the city.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then how was it coming back to? So is that your first time in the BBL?
Yeah, first time in the BBL.
How was that?
I think the BBL has had such a bad rap, especially as like, from when I was young, it was kind of like, I'll play in the BBL to finish my career. It's never a league. Like, not much known about it. Like, I didn't really follow it before. Kind of thought that it wasn't anything super special. It was a bit of like a wake up call. When I got there, I was like, oh, these guys are good, and like the level is high. So that was, again, cool experience, and it was my first time playing in a first league. Like, in Spain, I'd be playing in second and third league. And then to be in a first league was like a jump up, and it was pretty cool to see.
What kind of I know that in Spain the following behind basketball is huge, and there's some of the crowds and stuff that they pull. What was the kind of the difference between Spain and the UK there?
In terms of Spanish people are so passionate and will hurl abuse at you, like actual abuse, but again, different language at that point. I'm not understanding, so I'm just waving to the crowd like, hi guys, yeah, it's cool. Whereas I think the fan bases in England is a lot more family friendly. If we look at the differences between football culture and basketball culture, I think there's a lot more families are coming to basketball, which you're a husband and wife with 3 kids, and maybe even an older fan base. You've got your 65, 70-year-olds who are coming to basketball games. I think it's changing a little bit now, so it's just a lot more friendly. Up in Newcastle, big fan base, big following. Even back then, Newcastle's had a lot of success, so we were playing in front of like 2,500 people every night, selling out arenas. But then conversely, we'd go and play in Leeds when they had a franchise, and there was 60 people in the gym. So it's like it was all over the shop.
It's difficult, isn't it? Some people really enjoy playing in front of that crowd. They really draw from it. Is that something that you found?
I think the novelty wears off. No, that's a lie. The novelty doesn't wear off. I just think you get used to it. I don't think it impacts as much now as it did before. Maybe throughout the game. For example, in Plymouth we have an incredible fan base. We play at this place called the Pavilions, which is a theatre, So like it's a place for a performance and the acoustics are great, so it's really, really loud, and you go on a run and the fans, it gets very electric in there. So it's like, obviously you draw from that in the middle of the game, but I'm not, before the game, you're not going out and being like, oh, the stadium's packed, I'm nervous, if that makes sense. So like in the ebbs and flows of the game, I think it impacts, and sometimes in terms of empty gyms probably have more of an impact in terms of just ambience. You go from playing in front of thousands of people to 900, and it's a bit quiet, and you kind of have to make your own energy, and so I think it does make an impact.
So you were how long were you in the UK for?
So that was just one season,
right.
And then the following year I signed with Glasgow for 2 months, and they let me go, which was again much to my I didn't agree with the decision, but the clubs are clubs, it's professional sports. So that was the first time in my life that I got let go from a team.
How old were you then?
24, 25, I think, right. at that point. So it was unexpected, or maybe not unexpected, just the things that they'd told me and the reasons for why it was happening didn't make sense. And then from there, sat out for about a month, just staying ready, looking for an opportunity, and from there I moved to Germany and finished out a year in Germany, and then the next 4-ish seasons coincided with COVID. Was spent playing in Germany.
So you're playing behind closed doors, presumably?
So I spent my first, that rest of the season was in Germany, the following year was in Germany, and then the team I was with folded in February, which was another experience. They went insolvent, which was a bit turbulent, and I finished that year in Italy, but the following season I signed a 2-year deal in Germany. We played that year. At the close of that year was when COVID hit, so the season didn't get finished. Got terminated. COVID happened, like the first set of lockdowns. I came home. Can't even remember how long that was for. Effectively that 6-month period or whatever it was. Got the news it was opening up back in Germany, so I went back out there for the following season. We started playing. COVID shut down again, and in that time I think we were allowed in Germany like maybe 100 people in the gym, but it was like, if the ball bounces out of bounds, you have to switch the ball, and the ball has to be sanitized. So it was a lot of rules and regulations. I think on the bench you had to have a face mask on.
Right, yeah.
So it was an interesting time to play sports.
Difficult, isn't it? But it's good that you were able to keep playing. You speak to a lot of athletes, for example, people like there's gymnasts and stuff who are unable to go to the gym. There's no way for them to continue doing their sport. I know that it's difficult. I thought perhaps that you wouldn't have been able to play because you're playing indoor.
Well, that was the thing. A lot of it wasn't, and I was fortunate. I was at my parents' house. They got a nice back garden. My dad made me a hoop, literally from scratch. Like,
wow.
Stuck it up in the back garden so I could go out and shoot. It was a little frustrating, but at least I had a ball and could go and do that.
Something to focus on.
One of the trainers that one of the other athletes you guys have, Danny, and I work with, was doing Zoom workouts.
Right.
We were doing ball handling with 15 of us on a Zoom call, so it was like there was ways around it. But it was a testing time.
Difficult time. So then, on coming back to the UK, you've settled down south. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So after all that COVID stuff, I thought it was about time. I kind of got tired of the nomadic life of moving from town, city to country, to meeting new people, to new languages. I just kind of wanted to put some roots down, and I got an opportunity to go and play for the Plymouth City Patriots, and from there kind of fall in love with the area, really care about the team, and I'm invested. This is year 3 now for me with the team, and it's nice to be at a place that's invested in you, and that it's one of the tropes of playing professional sports on year-to-year contracts is, why do I care about this team's success? And I care about my success because I need to be successful to get another job, but why should I care about whether Plymouth Argyle do well or not, right? But I do care because I'm here and I've been a part of it, and I've been a part through the struggles, and I see the ups and the downs, and I see the work that goes on behind the scenes. I know the fans, I know the sponsors, I've got relationships with all those people in the community, so it's like I want the club to do well for these people to enjoy it. So that's been something that's been really cool, and something that I've been longing for in my career, and I'm happy to have found it.
That's great. Yeah, you really need that buy-in, don't you?
No, massively. I think that's one of the issues in professional sports, and why you see teams that are able to keep core groups of guys. I think in every sport, if you can keep depending on the sport, but 6, 7, 8 guys together, those are the teams that go on run and have great success.
Yeah, you find that'll often beat a team of mercenaries, basically, right?
Yeah.
And then in terms of this season, I know you had some unfortunate luck just at the beginning of the season. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so returning to England, I played my first year out, re-signed with the club. 2 days before pre-season, I ruptured my ACL, which
is a bad one.
Yeah, is a tough pill to swallow. And yeah, that recovery process post surgery was going to take about 12 months. But I was lucky that I had good relationships with the club, and they were happy for me to kind of stay on and stay around and complete my rehab. And I kind of dived into the coaching side of things. So I was an assistant for the BBL team. I ran the Division 3 team. I ran the university team. I coached the under-16 team, all whilst recovering and going through the rehab process. Which was challenging at times, but also like quite eye-opening. It allowed me to have a little peep into the future post-playing and see how much I enjoy the coaching side of things, which is definitely an avenue that I want to explore when I stop playing. But yeah, from that the recovery took a little longer than expected, and I had to miss the first 2 games of the year as well. So coming in to this season, I was only back on the court again at the beginning of October, so that was frustrating, but a joy to be back at the same time post all of that hard work to get back to where I wanted to be.
ACL, I mean, presumably with basketball being so back and forth, there's so much pivoting, and you're at one end of the court and now you've got to sprint back to the other end of the court. There's a lot of pressure that goes on the knees. Did you have a lot of injuries throughout your career?
I've had my second year, I broke my 5th metatarsal. I had a Jones fracture and had to have a screw put in that.
Is that an impact?
Yeah, I just took a step and it went.
Oh really? Just internally?
Yeah,
wow.
I think I had a stress fracture before now. Like when I look at it retrospectively, like I had all the signs of a stress fracture. But yeah, that was a pretty bad injury. But the ACL has been like the worst. There's always little niggles throughout, but I think that's just sport and life. You're gonna have little bad backs here, stub your finger there. So other than that, knock on wood, this has been the only real test.
There you go. So in terms of the future, obviously you've dipped your toes into the coaching waters. Do you think that'll be the route for you?
I think so. Basketball is definitely what I think my passion is and what I would say my expertise is in. Right? I don't think you can go to university and get a basketball degree, but having played for as long as I've played and played professionally as long as I've played and watched as much as I've watched, I'd like to think that like that's the thing that I'm most knowledgeable in and what I love, and just impacting people and seeing development. Like I think the kids that I work with at the moment are 16 to 18 year olds, just seeing their development in the last 4 or 5 months is so rewarding. You might not realise it at the time. It might be frustrating when they're not listening or they're making mistakes or think they know best. But like when you take a step back and look at where people have come, I think it's so rewarding and so cool to see. And helping people kind of try and attain their dreams is something also that is enjoyable work.
I think it's now 3rd most popular sport played in schools and 2nd fastest growing sport in the UK after women's football, so it's only going on the up. Where do you see the future of basketball?
It's a great question. I hopefully just moving forward. Where if we look at it from the professional level, there's 10 professional teams in the league, which is nowhere near enough. I hope that can grow. But just investment in the youth. There's a Hoops Fix, Sam Netter runs Hoops Fix, and they do such a phenomenal job of having a foundation, and they're going and they're renovating courts, and there's been so many courts throughout the country have been renovated, which are awesome places for people to go and play outside. Just want to see more of that, more involvement, more schools playing. I know down in Plymouth that a lot of the kids in secondary school that I speak to, I'm like, oh, are you playing at your school? And I know we don't even have a team. And it's like, I know all of these schools have a sports school that have basketball hoops in, so it's like if the facilities are there, it'd be great to see so many more schools competing. But I think it's definitely moving in the right direction. Guys like Jamel, Orlan Jackman, Miles Hessen, Kane Henry winning a Commonwealth gold medal in 3-on-3, I don't think anyone would have predicted that. And they're all guys that have stayed and played in England, right? Which is awesome. yeah, I think it's on the up and up, and hopefully that just continues.
Can we talk a little bit about funding? I know that one of the biggest sort of elements to any sport being successful is the money that kind of gets put into it. I know that can be quite difficult, especially when people are sort of coming up through the ranks. Can you tell us a bit about that, and perhaps how something like Sports for Champions can help?
Yeah, no, I think funding is always is a big issue. I mean, in basketball, if we live in England, it's miserable weather, isn't it? Right, 90% of the time, it's hard to go out and bounce a ball. And like you said, basketball is a very back and forth game on concrete with wet floor. Excuse me. I can't be running up and down outside. I'm just going to fall over. It's pointless. And when it comes to sports or hire, if you've got 5 badminton courts on a basketball court, I need to pay for 5 badminton courts to use the court, which is very expensive. So I think funding is super important. So yeah, just being able to give kids an opportunity to play at low cost, right? Because it is such a low economic sport. In terms of like the people that you attract to the sport come from low income areas, and we need to do everything we can to give them the opportunity to play. Absolutely, like 100%.
And then finally, if you had a piece of advice for somebody thinking about a career in sport, or maybe more specifically basketball, what would it be?
Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. Just find something that you enjoy, and if you enjoy, give everything you can to it. You know, give everything you can to it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and enjoy it. I think that's got to be the biggest thing, because if you don't enjoy what you do, you're going to come to resent it and hate it, and you don't want that to happen. Just enjoyment has got to be at the top, and then everything else falls underneath there.
Brilliant. I think that's a great note to end it on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Definitely. Well, thank you for everyone joining us at home, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.